everyone. Happy Valentine's Day. I am Pamela Hawk. I'm the CEO, president of Serenity's Door Incorporated. We're a nonprofit organization based in Prince George's County, Maryland. And I have with me today the lovely McYon Brown Anderson. She's the president, CEO of Lakeisha Brown Foundation. And she's going to share with us today a little bit about her organization, what she does, her personal experience on teen dating violence. And as we all know, this month, the month of February, is not only Black History Month, it's also Teen Dating Violence Awareness Month. So we in the domestic violence realm, we all know that that's all year round.
Absolutely.
You know, raising awareness and just being activists in the domestic violence, teen dating violence realm. So I'm going to pass the mic to McYon, and she's going to share a bit about what she does, and she's going to share her story of teen dating violence.
Yes, thank you so much for having me here today, Pam.
No problem.
Thank you again. As she stated, my name is McYon Brown Anderson. I'm the founder and president of the Lakeisha Brown Foundation. It's an organization that's dedicated to the eradication of domestic violence while promoting self-love and healthy relationships. I myself am a third generation survivor of domestic violence. I had my first altercation at the age of 16 years old, where at that time that boyfriend had strangled me. And it was an experience, but you know what? It was so normal, I'll say that.
Right.
It was normal because I grew up in a household. I didn't never see what a healthy relationship looked like. You know, all the relationships in my family was built on material things, and so they had men in their lives that had bad behavior, but they always bought gifts.
Right.
So I come from a
as long as you're good to me,
yeah,
everything is great.
Absolutely. The women in my family had furs and diamonds and cars and houses, and so when I started dating, I started getting the same things.
When the money comes up short, yeah, we got a problem. But other than that, we'll deal with this. Right.
And I also came from a very highly religious family, and so it was a matter of that when you went through those things, it was basically swept under the rug because the pastor couldn't know, the neighbors couldn't know, and so we just dealt with it. Well, we didn't deal with it. I'll say that we didn't deal with it, and that's how I was able to move from generation to generation. And so I have had a domestic violence relationship, some form I have experienced from 16 all the way to the age of 34 years old. Even in my marriage, you know, before I even married, I always tell this story that even before I married my husband, I had already been pushed out of a moving car. I had black eyes, I had a dislocated elbow, and all these things, and I still said I do. And because what? He bought me a house. He had cheated on me. I had left him, packed up everything. When he came back from his rendezvous, he came back to an empty apartment. And he came back and he was apologizing again.
The honeymoon.
And he wanted to make it better. He wanted his family back, and this time he was like, you know, you want a house? So remember, this little girl, those are the gifts we get. Yes, I want a house. And so he bought the house.
And everything was fine.
Well, no, it was never fine.
I know, but in your mind.
In my mind, yes.
That normalcy.
Yes, and then all of a sudden the church girl kicks in. Now God don't like me fornicating. I can't be shacking up with you.
Right.
You need to marry me. So then here come the wedding.
Okay.
You know, and it was just, you know, it was just normal to me. That's how, you know, you live. And I did that. I kept running in those circles and cycles and everything. And with my husband, I didn't have any children with my husband. I actually brought children into the marriage. And I started the organization for my daughter Lakeisha.
Yes.
And Lakeisha, yes. This is her picture right here. And I started the organization for her because in 2007 she was murdered by her 18-year-old boyfriend. And so at that time I had already left my husband. I had left my husband 3 years at the time when my daughter was murdered. And God started talking to me about generational curses, and that I had to tell my story, and that I had to start speaking about it to be able to help other mothers and other young girls recognize domestic violence and what it is, and so that they can understand that it will never get better unless you get help.
Absolutely.
On the day that my daughter was murdered and all her girlfriends was coming to the house and everything, all of them had a story. All of them had a story about this young man, of different places that they went, of altercations that him and my daughter had. But no one said anything to me. But on the day she died, everybody wanted to tell me.
Speak up. Right.
And so I basically told them, you know, keep those stories till you go to your grave, because there's nothing that I can do for my daughter right now.
Wow.
It's nothing I can do for her. And so it was a very painful and a very stressful situation, because I had to deal with her growing up in my household and watching me deal with these relationships of abuse and showing her how to accept the behavior. Exactly. Right. That this is the behavior that you accept, you know, and I never thought that I was a victim of a domestic violence, because my picture of abused women was always a woman who was so defenseless. And I always get this visual of a woman being in a corner just with her hands over her head, and I'm like, that ain't me. I grew up in Northeast DC. We in there clutching. Yeah, we in there.
Not to make light of it,
but you know, we in there fighting, we in there battling.
And that in itself is unhealthy.
Very unhealthy.
Unhealthy.
Very unhealthy.
So if you could share one thing to a teen that may be experiencing any level of dating violence, what would you share? Or if there's a teen that may be watching a girlfriend, and it happens to boys as well.
Absolutely.
A boyfriend that may be experiencing some level of teen dating violence, what would you share?
Yeah, well, we have to be honest with ourselves that every year 1.5 million teens are affected by some form of domestic violence. So it is happening. Right. It is happening every day. So what I would tell someone who is experiencing, who is that young girl who's experiencing domestic violence, is that, sweetheart, it will never get better. You cannot sex him enough. You can't cook enough. You can't look pretty enough. Right. He's going to take that and more. It becomes like a bottomless pit. You can never satisfy that. And it will never get better. You must speak up. You must tell someone. You must tell your parents. You must go and let them know what's going on and get the resources that you may need to help you come out of that safely.
Absolutely.
And you have to have a safety plan. And never tell your abuser that you're going to leave him, because that's when they're most vulnerable to lose their life in that time. So, you know, you have to keep everything a secret. And also, as a young woman, stop telling them everywhere where you're going. You know, have somewhere where you can go that they know nothing about. That if you have to go to regroup, to find out what you need to do to get out, you have that place to go to.
That safe place.
Definitely.
Right. So what would you say, in your opinion, are some of the warning signs as a friend, as a mother? What in your case, what were, or did you see any warning signs?
I didn't. Mostly everything with my daughter was kept away from me. And I had other family members who knew what was going on with my daughter, who
and they didn't
say
speak up.
No,
they didn't speak up.
Because that's just was the norm. You know, a lot of times you have friends and people, family members that wants to be your children's best friend. So they really don't have your children's best interests at heart when they're dealing with that, because it's nothing they shouldn't tell their mother.
Absolutely.
Because if anything happens to that child, they're coming looking for the mother, not that aunt who thinks she's the best friend.
Can you repeat what you just said in reference to keeping nothing?
Nothing from a parent. I mean, it's crazy how some adults think. Like you have more loyalty to a child.
Right. And to me, that's unhealthy.
That's very an unhealthy
relationship.
But it just goes to show you how it is across the board, and that's why it's so important that we need to educate.
So many, not to go back on a couple of episodes, that's how the sexual abuse and other things you know, come about. Oh, okay, well, this is gonna be our little secret. No, we don't have secrets.
We don't have secrets, and you have to be able to tell their parents and go to them and express to them what's going on. So that right there, and some of the warning signs that if you're a teenager, what you can see, you gotta think about, like, if he's looking at your cell phone. He wants to know who's calling you. He wants to know who's emailing you. Isolation. He wants to keep you away from your girlfriends, telling you that none of them ain't your friends. He wants to isolate you from your mother, you know, to get you in that place with, because remember, domestic violence is about power and control. So if I can separate you from everybody, I can control you. If I got you thinking that nobody is your real friend but me,
but you,
then I can do whatever I want to do to you, because you don't have that outlet. And so we have to be mindful of that. And also, if he's telling you what to wear, if he's telling you the different things, how, you know, how you wear your hair, you should wear your hair like this, and telling you different things and the type of clothes you wear, you shouldn't wear that, you shouldn't do this. You have to be mindful of all those things. All those things are red flags. And how he speaks to you.
Right.
How do he talk to you? Do he belittle you? Do he call you the B word? Do he do these certain things? Those are all red flags, because it's not healthy.
Right.
And a lot of those
when you
things,
experience that one time, you have to nip it.
Absolutely.
That one time becomes a second time, and then a third time, and then it becomes the norm.
Absolutely.
You know, in your relationship, because this is what you've allowed. So even in adult domestic violence situations that we've both been in, you know, that one time you allow it, that's what you accept, and that will become your norm. So not allowing it to become your norm is so pivotal, you know, in just creating a healthy, you know, environment for yourself, future relationships. So that was one of the things that stood out for me, because I have 3 daughters, you know, and I would want to see them cultivate healthy relationships. So like I said, I wanted you to share a bit on your story, your personal story with your daughter and her situation, and what all that you do.
Okay.
With Lakeisha Brown.
Okay, so she met this guy at 14 years old. So I knew this young gentleman. I knew him. I knew his family and everything. He used to come to the house. He was I really don't have anything bad to say about the young man. You know, he always presented himself.
Can I say this one thing, and this in my personal, they're always charming. They're always charming and manipulative. So those are, like you said, you don't, some of the signs you won't see, you know, unless you're really in tune or you're around, you know, a lot. So yeah, the 9 times out of 10, abusers are manipulative and they're quite charming.
Absolutely. And so my daughter met him. She was dating him at 14 years old. And I knew this guy. And at first we heard about altercations in the relationship.
Right.
So even though I was in a domestic violence relationship, because I was still with my husband at that time, and I didn't want that for her. You know how we are as mothers, you know, even though we may be going through something, we like, oh no, this ain't for you. You're not going to go through this. And so I had stepped in. I got her dad to step in, and even my abusive husband stepped in to see what's going on with this little dude putting his hands on her. So we got his mother involved in everything. I even went to the 7th District Police Station and got them involved. And because I wasn't educated on domestic violence, I thought it stopped. I didn't hear of any more altercations. When I seen them together, it was all peachy keen, and they was always smiling and with each other. And so I never knew. I never knew my daughter had a black eye to the day she died, and my mother verbalized it.
Wow.
And we in a room with everybody coming over to give their condolences to me and everything, and my mother like, yeah, because she had a black eye. And I'm like, when? I have never seen my daughter with a black eye. So when did she have a black eye? Why? When she was with you? Is that one of the weekends she came and stayed over your house and you never told me? Is that when she had it? Because I never seen it. So like I said, you know, you have this, sometimes you have family members that are enablers to situations.
What goes on in this family and this house stays in this house.
Absolutely.
That's an attitude that we cannot continue to, you know, perpetuate.
Absolutely.
all sorts of violence thrives in silence.
And like my mom is a survivor of domestic violence. She left my dad when I was 3 years old. And you know, people always say, well, did you see domestic violence in your mother's house? My mother never brought another man around her children because what she went through with my father.
Wow.
Never. I never seen my mother talk down to or anything by any man. Any guy that we did see her with, he was very respectful, treated her like she was a queen. We never seen it.
Right.
But what happened is when my mom left my dad, it threw my mom into a financial situation. And we know that with domestic violence with women, the number one reason why they stay is financial, because they're not able to provide and take care of what they need to. And so we had to go move in with my grandmother. And even though my grandmother is a survivor of domestic violence, she experienced it in the 40s where her first husband tried to murder her, and she had to end up climbing out of a window of her hometown with, girl, he had cut up, this is the 40s, this man cut up all my grandmother's clothes, shoes. She had to jump out and locked her in the house, had to come out the window, get her children, went to a girlfriend's house whose mother put my grandmother on a train to DC because my grandmother had a sister living here to get away from this crazed man who wanted to kill her.
Wow.
And so when we moved with my grandmother, my grandmother was with another abuser, but this time this guy, he was a verbal abuser because he was an alcoholic. Yeah, absolutely. So we didn't see any physical abuse with her and him, but verbal, oh my God, his mouth would go. And it was crazy because even as young children, because he used to drink, I remember in junior high school, we was had to get up because he used to go to work at like around about 7 or 8 in the night. He worked for the sanitation department for DC. Okay. And he would come home like 3, something like that in the morning. So as teenagers, we still up on the phone and everything on the phone. So now we got to fight. We literally in there fighting this man because he mad because we on the phone. Everything runs, you know, back then everything ran up the bill. You ran up my phone bill. You run up the electric bill. You know, everything you ran up a bill. So
and in your mind, you're like, mind your business.
Right. And so then early, I learned how not to have respect for men.
Okay.
I learned how to talk down because this man, when we got old enough and big enough, we beat him down.
Okay.
We beat him down. He coming in with that, we jumping him in the house. Me and my sister and my brothers and my cousins come over, we jumping this dude, putting him out the house, my grandmother's house and everything.
Right. And you shouldn't have to.
Yeah, he did. He called the police on us. I want all these niggas out. But that's what we grew up in, and so I didn't see that healthy relationship and what it looked like. So we would go through all this during the week. Then every Sunday we there looking good, you know, everybody all dressed up, real fly, going to church. So I didn't see what a healthy relationship was. I didn't know what that looks like, and so it just repeated itself. And then so when you step out of that, you learn to accept those behaviors because you like, well, you told, well, this is just how men are. You know, men gonna do that, men gonna cheat, but you don't worry about that as long as he provides and taking care of.
You accept.
No, I would rather take care of myself, and that's why in my life I've always been the type. I always took care of myself. So I always used to say, you know, what you think you doing something? You're not doing nothing for me that I ain't doing for myself. I ain't impressed.
This is the add-on.
Yes, I'm not impressed. You know, jump out the window or something. Maybe I'll be impressed. But I'm not impressed what you're doing because I'm doing it myself. So it was just, it's big with what we teach our children and what we show them.
And can I piggyback off of that? Teaching our children is one thing, but we have to be mindful that we teach our children things indirectly by what we accept.
Absolutely.
By what we do.
It's what we do.
Our everyday activity. The people that we allow in our space, because when we allow them in our space, they're in their space.
Absolutely.
You know, so they pick up on a lot of these things inadvertently through, you know, we're not sitting them down and teaching them this is how an unhealthy relationship looks, but through our actions, you know, this is what we've taught.
Right.
So,
and we got to get away. You're absolutely right. We got to get away from that, because we have to have the conversations. We have to mimic healthy relationships in front of them, because a lot of them don't know. And then we got these old cliches that we must get away from. You know, society teach young girls to accept abuse from men very early on in life. I remember that, you know, you have little girls in kindergarten that go to school for the first time with young boys, and little boys pull their hair, push them, and all these things. And teachers and other people say, well, he just like you and don't know how to express himself. Well, then you already teaching me to say, okay, well, I'm going to accept the abuse he gives me because it's love, but he just don't know how to express it. I never thought of that. Like that. That's real. Yeah, it's real. And we have to get away from that. Right. We have to get away from that.
Space. Yeah. I need you to stay out.
I just had a situation the other day where we in 2018 and parents are still saying that in defense of their sons when they're hitting little girls at school, and teachers are and educators are co-signing it. Listen, stop talking that, because that's foolishness. You are already setting women, those little girls, up to accept abuse from a man, because now she like, well, he likes me and he loves me, and this is how I identify with that. No, that's not it. That's not that. No. We have to do better. We have to do better.
And when you know better, you do better.
Absolutely.
So 1 out of 3 teens in the United States has experienced teen dating violence at some point in their lifetime. I have a website that if you or someone that you may know that is in a situation or that may be experiencing some things that may be unhealthy, you can always pull it up. It's loveisrespect.org. Yes. So you can just look at, you know, the warning signs, so you can educate. You know, and we can educate each other.
Yes.
And also, this is another thing that we were talking about off camera, is if you're a male and your buddy, how they say, your man's, you see him perpetuating violence on, she may not be your girlfriend, but that's your sister, that's your queen, that could be anyone's, you know, sister or daughter. Pull them up. It's not okay. And it's okay for you to say, okay, this is what you're doing. Right. It's not right.
It's not right.
And I would rather lose a friendship.
There you go.
You know, opposed to standing on, you know, on the sideline and saying, "Dang, you know, he messed her up," or you know, he took her phone, or you know, they had a fight. You know, that's not cool to be to be a bystander, and you know, someone is experiencing domestic violence, whether you're a family member, whether you're a friend, or if even an outsider, just an observer, just someone that you may know as an acquaintance. Say something, see something, say something.
There you go.
Please, I can't stress that, you know, enough. If you see something, say something. The national teen dating violence number is 1-866-331-9474. Again, the website is loveisrespect.org.
And I'm glad you brought that up when you talk about being a friend.
You have to hold them accountable.
You have to.
You have to hold them accountable.
You have to. I am a safe date facilitator for Prince George's County for teens, and we teach teens on that, about how to be a friend. How do you address the friend that's being an abuser, and how do you address your friend that's a victim of domestic violence?
Right.
And the overall thing is that you have to say something. You have to let them know that the behaviors that's going on, you have to call it for what it is, and it's not acceptable. And also, we know that boys are abused. When I go out and speak to teens, it's the young men line up to talk about the abuse that they experience from young girls. This day and time, the girls are very aggressive. The girls are very aggressive. So even within, I'm teaching young men that, okay, you don't have to accept abuse either. And then you got to ask yourself, why do you want to be with somebody that you got to beat, that you got to do all these things with? Now, not only do we have to tell women about their worth, but it's time to tell men and boys about their worth. You are a king just as much as she a queen. You don't have to accept that type of abuse.
Absolutely.
You don't have to accept that. So definitely, and just like you said with the parents, if you want to know how to start the conversation, go to loveisrespect.org. It will definitely give you those resources that you need to even start to have the conversation with your teens, and have your teens look at it as well. Do it together.
Exactly.
I'll say that. Exactly. Go to the website together, and if your teen have some questions, address it. And I'm not telling you to share everything with your teen, but share with them enough that they can feel as though that you can relate to what they're going through. Because that's the only thing that's different from me and their parents. When I share my story and open myself up, they like, okay, I can relate to her.
Right, absolutely.
I can relate to her. So be there for your child. Let them know that this is not foreign, that you went through it too, and that you know what's going on, and be able to support them in this. And they always say the same two things of why they don't come to you. They say because they do not believe that that they can come to you and talk about this without being made to feel as though it's their fault. Right. So we got to stop the blame game. It ain't their fault. They don't choose to be abused. Right. They're in love with what they know what love to be. Right. And then another thing is that they just don't want to hurt you. They don't want you to know that their beautiful child is experiencing this, and so they feel as though, okay, if I got in it, I can get out of it. But a lot of our young teens are getting out of it, and they don't even know nothing about it because we're burning them 6 feet deep. So we must change the dialogue that we're having with our teens.
Absolutely. All right. Well, we thank you, everyone, for joining us. I wanted you to give your the summit that you have coming up on Monday, and share all of your contact information, your social media, before we any shout outs you may have.
Okay. So I can be reached on Facebook and Instagram at Mignon, Mignon Brown-Anderson. And also this Monday on President's Day, I am actually doing a safe date workshop for teens in White Plains, Maryland. It's being sponsored by the Zonta Club of Charles County. And we're going to go over these teen dating violence issues with teens. We're going to talk about how to be a friend. We're going to talk about digital abuse. We're going to talk about just knowing the warning signs and being able to help them to deal with domestic violence, because they are dealing with it. And again, as I stated, 1.5 million teens every year are dealing with some form of domestic violence on a daily basis.
Well, thank you so much for sharing your story.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming on. Also, my name is Pamela Hawk. You can reach me at phawk@serenitiesdoor.org. Social media, IG, serenitiesdoor _ Miss Pam to you, #2, the letter U. Also Twitter, Serenity's Door. Everything is Serenity's Door. So thank you for joining us. And ultimately, if you see something, say something, speak up. All sorts of violence thrives in silence. Break the silence. Thank you.
Absolutely.